I want to open a business account. I'm sorry, but documents like these don't exactly inspire confidence.
There is a sound that stays with you. Not a loud sound, not the sound of a crash or a scream or something that makes everyone freeze all at once. No, it's a small sound. A sharp little click against cold marble. The kind of sound that, if you weren't paying attention, you might miss entirely. But everyone in that lobby heard it. And every single person in that room knew exactly what it meant. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something for me. If you're watching this for the first time, hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this, they need to be told. They need to be heard. It was a Tuesday morning at Sterling Financial Bank, one of those grand, polished institutions where everything is designed to make you feel either very important or very small. The marble floors, the high ceilings, the soft, expensive smell of leather and ambition. Everything about that building was built to remind you of your place in the world. Roberto Silva walked through those glass doors quietly. He was 60 years old. His hair had gone gray, combed neatly back. His hands, the hands of a man who had worked them raw for decades, were steady at his sides. His clothes were simple, nothing flashy. He looked like a man who had long since stopped needing to prove anything to anyone. He approached the front desk and asked, with perfect calm, to open a business account. That's when Anderson Mitchell noticed him. Anderson was a senior manager at Sterling Financial, 34 years old, Italian tie, the kind of smile that is more weapon than warmth. He had spent 8 years at that bank building a reputation as someone who knew how to read people, which, and in his mind, meant deciding within 30 seconds whether someone belonged in his world or not. He looked at Roberto, and he had already made his decision. "I'm sorry," Anderson said, stepping in before anyone else could help, "but documents like these don't exactly inspire confidence." And then, without hesitation, without even a flicker of shame, he took Roberto's ID card from the counter and dropped it. Not handed it back, not placed it down, dropped it. It hit the marble floor with a sharp, ringing sound that cut through the entire lobby. Click. The room went still. An elegant woman near the window leaned toward her husband and whispered something. Two executives in suits stopped their conversation mid-sentence. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to get louder in the silence that followed. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting to see what the old man would do. Roberto crouched down slowly. He picked up the card. He stood back up. And his hands, those worn, weathered, powerful hands, did not shake. Not even for a moment. "I understand perfectly," Roberto said. His voice was calm, measured, like the surface of a lake on a windless day. "I just came to make a simple transaction, but I can see that perhaps this is not the right time." Anderson rolled his eyes and turned to Paula, his assistant, muttering just loudly enough to be heard. "It's always like this with these kinds of people. They walk in here without understanding how things work." Paula said nothing, but her face said everything. What Anderson Mitchell did not know, what he could not have known, not because he had never bothered to look past the gray hair and the simple clothes, was exactly who was standing in front of him. Roberto Silva had not arrived at that bank by accident. For 3 months, his daughter had been mentioning Sterling Financial at family dinners. "Dad, we're closing a massive partnership with them. $5 billion. It's the biggest contract in our company's history." Roberto had listened quietly, the way he always listened. Carefully, with patience, filing every detail away. So when he walked into that lobby, he wasn't just a man looking to open an account. He was a man paying attention. He watched how the staff greeted the well-dressed clients, with warm smiles, with gourmet coffee, with an almost reverential deference. But he watched how they escorted executives in expensive suits directly to private offices, bypassing the line entirely. He watched the whole system at work, the invisible rules that determined who mattered and who didn't. And Roberto had seen exactly what he came to see. Standing at the revolving door before he stepped out into the sunlight, he took out his phone. "Camilla, I need to talk to you about Sterling Financial. It's urgent." The reply came back within seconds. "Is there a problem, Dad?" Roberto typed slowly, deliberately. "Let's just say I had an interesting experience with their customer service. Can we talk tonight?" He glanced one last time at Anderson, who was now practically bowing over a blonde woman in a gray suit, all smiles and charm and warm hospitality. A quiet, almost invisible smile crossed Roberto's face. Some people, he thought, are about to find out that underestimating someone based on their ID card can cost far more than they imagine. He walked out into the sun. No anger, no visible wound. Just the quiet certainty of a man who had already set something in motion. That evening, Anderson Mitchell sat at his favorite restaurant on the 20th floor of the bank, cutting into grilled salmon and telling the story for the third time to his colleagues. He did the voice. He made them laugh. He described the look on the old man's face, the awkward crouch to retrieve the card, the attempt to keep his dignity. The other managers laughed along, raising their glasses, congratulating him on another day of maintaining standards. "I actually saved everyone time," Anderson said, sipping his wine. Imagine if he'd actually tried to open an account and found out he didn't have the minimum deposit. I spared him the embarrassment. Paula stirred her salad and said nothing. But somewhere across the city, in the kitchen of a quietly impressive apartment, Camila Silva poured her father a cup of coffee. The cup itself worth more than Anderson's weekly restaurant budget. And listened. She listened as Roberto told her, calmly and in order, exactly what had happened. The approach to the counter, the comment about his documents, the dropped ID card and the cold, ringing sound it made against the floor, the muttered comment about these kinds of people. By the time Roberto finished, Camilla's expression had changed. She had a particular kind of stillness when she was dangerous. Some people who knew her in the boardroom recognized it. That absolute quiet before she made a move that no one saw coming. "He threw your ID on the floor," she said. Her voice was perfectly level, like it was trash. "Yes," Roberto said. "But don't worry, daughter. I've been through worse." He had. Roberto Silva had built his first company from nothing in the 1980s, when banks refused to finance a black entrepreneur's dreams, no matter how airtight the business plan. He had sold everything he owned. He had worked 20 hours a day. He had built low-income housing with his own hands until he could afford to hire his first employees, and then his 10th, and then his 50th. By 60, he had sold that company for a fortune that almost no one knew about. His wealth sat quietly in investment funds spread across 3 countries. His net worth had 8 digits, but his clothes were still simple. His manner was still modest. His hands were still the hands of someone who knew what real work felt like. He had never needed the world to know who he was. Until now. "You know what's interesting, daughter?" Roberto said gently. "I've been thinking about the partnership you're signing with them." Camila nodded once, and that dangerous gleam appeared in her eyes. The one Roberto had recognized since she was a child, the one that meant she had already started calculating. $5 billion, Dad, she said quietly. "It's almost half our annual revenue." "I know," said Roberto. The silence between them was full of everything that didn't need to be said out loud. 3 days later, Roberto woke before dawn and took out the one Hugo Boss suit he owned, the one he had worn to the closing ceremony when he sold his first company, the one that had hung in the back of his closet ever since. He put it on. This was not a day for modesty. By the time the sun was fully up, Roberto was seated at a conference table with Camila, her chief financial officer Marcus Thompson, and Dr. Enrique Mora, a senior attorney who had spent 15 years navigating the most complex corporate contracts in the region. The table was covered in documents, contracts, termination clauses, financial projections. "Dad, once we cancel, there's no coming back from this," Camila said, looking at him carefully. $5 billion? Roberto adjusted his cuffs and met her eyes. "Daughter, I have learned one thing in 40 years of building companies. Money can be recovered. Dignity, once lost, takes decades to rebuild." Dr. Mora cleared his throat. Clause 17 allows for unilateral termination in cases of discriminatory practices by the financial institution, but we'll need concrete evidence. Roberto reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Inside was a document that made the experienced attorney's face go pale. It was a printout of Anderson Mitchell's LinkedIn activity. 2 years' worth. Posts about maintaining quality standards and filtering for the right cultural fit. Comments on diversity articles that revealed clearly and systematically a mindset that had no business being near a $5 billion international partnership. likes on content that no senior banker should have anywhere near his public profile, and, knee from a disgruntled former Sterling Financial employee, copies of internal emails in which Anderson had referred to Latin American clients as cultural risks and questioned the statistical reliability of Black entrepreneurs. Marcus Thompson read through it slowly, his face unreadable. Then he set the papers down. "Mr. Silva," he said quietly, "how did you get all this?" Roberto smiled. "When you've been building companies since you were 20 years old, you learn that information is power. Anderson Mitchell isn't just arrogant, he's careless." Anderson Mitchell, of course, had no idea any of this was happening. He was having an excellent week. His LinkedIn post about maintaining high standards in customer service had collected dozens of positive comments from colleagues and admirers. But he had posted photos of his gourmet lunches and received compliments on his taste. He was expecting a promotion. He had already started mentally redecorating his future corner office. On the morning of the meeting, he arrived at Sterling Financial beaming. Management had sent him a message: urgent meeting with strategic partners, 10 a.m. In Anderson's mind, there was only one possible explanation. His moment had arrived. "Paula," he said, straightening his gold tie, the one he saved for important occasions, "have my desk polished and prepare the special coffee. Today is the day my career takes off." At 9:45, Paula appeared in his doorway. Her face was pale. "Anderson," she said carefully, "there's a problem. The Silva family is here for the meeting." Anderson frowned. I don't know any Silvas important enough for—" "It's the man from yesterday." Paula swallowed. "He's with a woman who introduced herself as the CEO of Coleman Industries." The room seemed to tilt. Coleman Industries? The $5 billion company. Anderson was at his computer in an instant, hands trembling, typing Roberto Silva into the search bar. The results came back immediately. Roberto Silva, age 60, retired businessman, father of Coleman Industries CEO Camila Silva. Estimated net worth, $120 million. "No," Anderson whispered. "No, no, no." He ran. When he pushed open the door to the main conference room, the scene inside hit him like a physical blow. Roberto was seated at the head of the table in an impeccably tailored suit. Every inch the man Anderson had tried to erase from that lobby 3 days ago. Knee beside him sat a woman in her 40s, poised, authoritative, unmistakably powerful. The regional director of Sterling Financial, Michael Thompson, stood to the side, his expression already communicating something close to panic. "Mr. Mitchell." Camila Silva's voice was perfectly controlled. "I believe you've already met my father." Anderson forced a smile that didn't reach anything near his eyes. "Mr. Silva, there was a misunderstanding. I didn't know that you were interesting," Roberto said calmly. "I was under the impression that Sterling Financial treated all clients with equal respect, regardless of appearance." Michael Thompson stepped forward. "Ms. Silva, Mr. Silva, I personally apologize for any—" "Anderson," he said sharply, "perhaps you should step outside." "Actually," Camilla said, opening her briefcase, "I'd like Mr. Mitchell to stay. After all, he's the reason we're here." She laid a set of documents on the table. "We are canceling our $5 billion partnership with Sterling Financial." The silence that followed was total. Michael Thompson looked as if the floor had opened beneath him. "Camilla," he started, "we can fix this. Anderson will be disciplined. I give you my word." "Michael." Roberto's voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "When your institution throws a client's identity card on the floor like it's garbage, you're not just disrespecting one person. You're showing the world your corporate culture, and that is not something a formal apology can repair." Anderson tried desperately to find solid ground. "Mr. Silva, I was following standard protocol. I was protecting the bank from potential fraud. It was nothing personal." Camilla slid the printed LinkedIn records across the table without a word. Anderson stared at them. His own words, his own likes, his own digital history laid out in black and white for everyone in the room to see. "Taken out of context," he whispered. "Just like it was taken out of context when you threw my father's ID on the floor," Camila said. Roberto stood. He wasn't a tall man. He didn't raise his voice. But in that moment, the room belonged entirely to him. "Yesterday, when you humiliated me, I was simply a customer," he said. "Today I am the father of the CEO you have just lost." Anderson sank into his chair. He had no words left, no performance left, just the cold, dawning reality of what his 5 seconds of arrogance had cost. Roberto paused at the door on his way out. He turned back one final time, not with anger, not with triumph, just with the steady, unshakable dignity of a man who had never actually lost it. "Do you know the difference between us, Anderson?" he said. Anderson couldn't look up. "You judged me by my appearance. I judged you by your character." A pause. "Of the two of us, only one had anything of real value to offer." The door closed. The sound it made was nothing like a marble floor. It was quieter, more final. Anderson Mitchell cleared out his desk 2 weeks later. 8 years. Every client he had cultivated, every lunch he had expensed, every LinkedIn post about maintaining excellence. It all fit into a single cardboard box. His colleagues in the hallways watched with the kind of looks that felt worse than open contempt. The story had gone viral internally. WhatsApp groups, my coffee break whispers, always ending with the same phrase: "Never judge a book by its cover." Paula was promoted to his former position. One of her first acts as regional manager was to launch a diversity and inclusion program that became a model for every other branch in the network. On the wall of her office, she hung a single framed quote: "Respect first, ask questions later." Meanwhile, Roberto and Camilla sat across the table from Marcus Chun, president of Commonwealth National Bank, and signed a partnership worth $5.2 billion, $300 million more than Sterling Financial had offered. Better terms, better alignment, and from the very first handshake, nothing but respect. "Mr. Silva," Marcus Chun said, his hand extended with the genuine warmth of someone who understood what he was looking at. "It is a rare thing in this industry to work with a family that values dignity above profit." Roberto smiled. "Marcus, I've learned that true partners respect you at the first handshake, not after they find out what you're worth." 3 months after the meeting that changed everything, Anderson was still unemployed. Every interview ended the same way. Every hiring manager recognized the name, recognized the story. "Oh, Anderson, the one who lost the $5 billion contract?" And just like that, the door was closing before it ever fully opened. One morning, he was sitting alone in a cheap cafe, nursing a coffee, when he heard the door open behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know. Roberto Silva ordered his coffee quietly, paid politely, and as he passed Anderson's table on his way to the door, he paused. "Good morning. No, Anderson," he said, without the smallest trace of malice. "How's the job search going?" Anderson's throat tightened. "Mr. Silva." He swallowed hard. I'd like to apologize. I didn't know who you were. I can change. Anderson." Roberto's voice was gentle but firm. "You knew everything you needed to know. You knew I was a human being who deserved basic respect. That was all the information that mattered. Everything else was irrelevant." Anderson had nothing left to say. Roberto looked at him for a moment, not with satisfaction and not with pity, just with the quiet honesty of someone who had already moved on. "I sincerely hope you find your way through this," Roberto said, "because the next person you judge by their appearance may have a daughter even more powerful than mine." He walked out into the morning sunlight. The door swung shut behind him. 6 months later, Coleman Industries had grown by 40%. Roberto Silva, now officially hired as a strategic consultant for his daughter's company, had turned a corner office into something else entirely, a space where he mentored young entrepreneurs who had been turned away by banks, rejected by institutions, told that they didn't fit the profile. Young men and women who knew exactly what it felt like to have their dignity dropped on a cold marble floor. "Dad," Camilla said one afternoon, watching him work with a young entrepreneur who had been refused by 3 separate banks. "You turned one humiliation into an engine of growth for hundreds of people." Roberto shook his head gently. "Daughter, I learned a long time ago. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's building something so extraordinary that they finally understand how small they were." 1 year after the day that ID card hit the floor, Roberto was invited to speak at the National Banking Convention. He stood at the podium and looked out across a room full of executives, managers, and industry leaders. And near the back, half hidden in the middle of a row, he spotted a familiar face. Older looking than he remembered. Smaller. A man in an off-the-rack suit, working now as an insurance salesman, a shadow of the senior manager he had once been. Anderson Mitchell met his eyes for just a moment, then looked away. Roberto drew a breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying easily through the room. "Today, I want to tell you about 5 seconds. 5 seconds of disrespect, and how they cost a financial institution $5 billion. The room was absolutely silent, and somewhere in the back, Anderson Mitchell bowed his head, knowing that this story, his story, would be told again and again, not as a tale of victory, not as entertainment, but as a warning, a lesson, a case study in business schools about what happens when you confuse arrogance with intelligence and status with character. Roberto finished his speech with something quiet, something that settled over the room like smoke. "The difference between respectful service and discrimination," he said, "has nothing to do with the wealth of the person standing in front of you. It has everything to do with the character of the person doing the serving." The applause that followed was long and genuine, but Roberto stepped down from the stage with the same steady walk he had on the morning he crouched to pick his ID card up off the floor. Unhurried. Unbroken. Exactly who he had always been. That ID card, thrown down like garbage on a Tuesday morning, had not broken his dignity. It had revealed something. The moral fragility of people who believe that power means the ability to make others feel small. The dangerous blindness of those who look at a human being and see only what they're wearing, only what they're carrying, only what they look like, and miss, entirely, the depth and weight of the life standing before them. Anderson had tried to end something. Instead, he had begun something. Roberto had not repaid damage with damage. He had taken the humiliation, that small, a sharp click of a falling ID card, and turned it into something that would outlast all of them. A mentorship program, a case study, a speech that changed how thousands of professionals treated the people who walked through their doors. He had understood, long before that Tuesday morning, that true strength does not announce itself. It does not need to flaunt itself in Italian ties or corner offices or loud, dismissive laughter over grilled salmon. It simply waits. And when the moment is right, when the lesson is needed and the world is ready to receive it, it acts. Quietly. Completely. And in ways that those who underestimated it will spend the rest of their lives reckoning with. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel like you didn't belong, remember this: the most powerful people in any room are often the ones no one is watching. Please subscribe and stay with us for more stories of dignity, justice, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself.